So because of the shooting, we now have to talk about legislation regarding gun control. And there are, President Obama actually came out with 23 points, and so we're going to just discuss a few. The first one being that they want to improve incentives for the state to share information with a background check system.
Yeah, right after her outro. I'm actually going to hop on prompter.
What do you think about this?
Because there's no audio for it.
Okay.
It only makes perfect sense for there to be a community between two systems of government to work together to facilitate better protection for the citizens. Obviously, we can see through the Sandy Hook shooting that there needs to be some sort of check to see who falls into the category of maybe they should not own a gun, or maybe they should have checkups on them to see if they can use a gun properly.
All right, and Jacob?
Well, what we've seen in shootings like Sandy Hook and previous school shootings or shootings in general, the person that is the shooter, the criminal, got access to guns in other ways, be it illegal ways, family members, things like that. So, I mean, restricting people on buying guns, it might help maybe, but like we see in Chicago, people get guns illegally just as easily, if not easier, than getting them legally. And they're a lot cheaper actually that way too. So I don't know if more restrictions is going to do any good.
Great. So, along with that, he also proposed rulemaking to give law enforcement the ability to run a full background check on someone before returning a seized gun. Now, Kevin, what do you see as the benefits for that?
All right, so on his point earlier, he said that not many people have guns, that they didn't get guns legally or through legal means. And what we can see is that all these guns that law enforcement does obtain, it provides some sort of insight as to maybe they can track out where it came from or who's providing the guns to these sorts of people. It only makes sense to have that sort of, that ties between the two different systems of government in order to facilitate better gun control. Even if we can't track all the illegal ones, we can make some sort of headway on where they're coming from.
All right. And how about you, Jacob?
If that actually worked, there wouldn't be such a bad crime rate in Chicago. I mean, cops are doing everything that they can to stop crime rate, to stop gun violence, and it's just simply not working. Restrictions don't work.
But do you think a full background check might help?
A background check on a person who's caught with a gun? Okay,
Before returning the gun back.
what's that going to do? Okay, you take that gun away, then it's going to go to another one.
Okay. All right. So another point that has been very popular recently has been maximizing enforcement efforts to prevent gun violence and prosecute gun crime. Now, this includes the potential of eliminating the ability to purchase high-capacity assault rifles and high-capacity magazines, and the NRA has been all over this aspect of it. Now, what do you see as the positive of limiting these?
Well, I mean, if you take a look at assault rifles and high-capacity magazines, they don't really have another purpose other than to injure human beings. If you're a hunter or a real hunter, you'll know that you sit in a tree for hours, and you may get 1 or 2 shots off of an animal.
Have you ever hunted before?
No, sir, I have not, but I have plenty of friends who do, and as well as my
I actually hunted, and I know that having guns that have high capacity gives you a better chance of hitting an animal.
So, explain to me, why do you take multiple shots? After you fire 1 bullet, doesn't the animal usually run away?
You can shoot it on the run. Good marksman,
So-
even me as like a 10, 12-year-old, I was able to get multiple shots off with a bolt action.
Were you
But-
were you using a high capacity assault rifle though that is designed for military purposes?
No, but those can be changed for hunting purposes. They can be adjusted for hunting purposes.
Not only that, but can you explain to us what's the difference between having 8 bullets as opposed to having, let's say, 30 in a magazine?
Have you ever tried to reload a gun? It's a long time, especially when you're trying to catch a deer that's running away.
So, is there an actual
My problem with this thing is that people who have never even touched a gun argue about guns. They don't even know their way around a gun. They may know how to hold it because they play arcade games, but
Excuse
what
me.
gives you the right to argue about taking away my guns or my family's guns when you have no idea what you're talking
Well,
about?
you're making the
Alright.
assumption, first off, that I haven't touched the gun, so I'm a Eagle Scout, and I have touched the gun a few times. My question to you is, are you going to actually use 30 bullets to kill an animal? Doesn't that defeat the purpose of hunting? Doesn't that ruin the hide? Doesn't that ruin the meat?
The point of it is not to hit it with all 30 rounds. The point is to give you a better chance of hitting it before having to reload it before it gets away. If you have a bolt action rifle, then you have a window of maybe a minute or a second and a half to hit it before having to chamber another round. And deer run fast, birds move fast. You can't, to bolt another round in takes too long. You just don't have that time when you're
So,
hunting, especially when you're hunting high profile game.
So I guess the question that raises is, with the high capacity magazines that might have 30 bullets, are you really going to have time to fire off all 30 bullets while that animal is running away?
It depends. It depends on what animal it is. You could get probably 20 shots off. I mean, you're probably pretty poor marksman if you can't hit the animal then, but the idea is to give you a better chance of hitting the animal, because I know from personal experience, when you have a 15-point buck in front of you, you want to bag that animal. And having, a 5-chamber rifle that you have the bolts already load in, it makes that a lot harder.
Okay.
So I have a question for you. Do you believe that there comes some point to where your right to own a gun should be hindered by the government's purpose to protect the citizens of the United States?
You have to talk about, if you want to talk about rights, one person's right cannot infringe on another person's right. So when you talk about gun rights, you have to realize that you're restricting my rights or people's rights. And it's not just about hunting. It's about personal protection or Second Amendment rights. It was written in the Constitution for a reason. You're taking away a huge segment of the population's right to own and bear arms because a handful of people abuse that right and do horrible things. I'm not trying to sit here and say that horrible things don't happen with guns. They do, but horrible things happen with cars too. More people in almost every single state besides Alaska and the District of Columbia are killed by motor vehicle accidents than by guns per year. That's just a fact. So are we going to start restricting license rates, car sales? I mean, you have to take that into account too.
Well, see, I like the idea, and if you mind, let's go back to the constitutional right to bear a gun, because that seems to be the core issue of why people want to keep their guns, and that's kind of like the core of the debate. So with let's just go back to other constitutional rights that are restricted because it harms other people. For instance, you can't yell fire, it's the common example, you can't yell fire in a crowded theater, and because that can injure other people. In the same reason, don't you think that it's reasonable, in the same idea, don't you think it's reasonable to restrict people's ability to own dangerous weapons because they can harm other people?
Okay, so if you take away guns, what do you take away next? Do you take away knives? Do you take away hunting knives? Do you take away things like machetes, axes that people use for practical purposes, just like they use guns for practical purposes?
That's the slippery slope of the argument. Right now, it's the focus is gun control.
Well, if you're going to legislate it, it can't be a slippery slope. If you're going to legislate it and take away constitutional rights, it has to be a firm belief, and it can't be slippery.
We are discussing the rights to bear arms, specifically high capacity rifles at this time. So to wrap it up, I'm going to ask you guys, why do you feel, Jacob, that it is necessary for people to have access to military-style assault rifles?
Military-style assault rifles fall under the constitutional right of having and bearing arms. The point of that constitutional amendment is to give citizens of the United States the ability to protect themselves against any possible threat, foreign or domestic. I don't see a problem with people owning military-style rifles to protect themselves. I don't see a problem with that.
All right, and we're going to end with you.
Sure. So I believe that people do have the right to bear arms, and by all means, they should be able to use them in times of need, when somebody is invading their home, or when they're trying to provide them for themselves via hunting, or when there's a national crisis. But the problem that we're running into now is that there is an increased tendency for gun violence, especially in large urban and city areas where we have to do something about it. And large majority of people, even NRA members, 74% of NRA members are for increased gun control. And I think that it's time that there's something done, regardless of what you believe about high-capacity magazines, something done about gun control in general.
All right, well, that about wraps it up for us. Thank you for listening to the roundtable debate on gun control. Up next we have, what do we have up next? Okay, can I do that again? Well, that about wraps it up for us. Thank you for listening to the roundtable debate on gun control. Up next, we have Spencer Wilson talking to Cole Freed and Sale.